I was homeless about 7 years ago, and for the most part, it was joyful and a fun, life transforming experience. But there were parts of it that were painful, and some choices I made that I do regret. So let me explain how I became homeless in 2017, about 7 years ago. About 7 years ago, I was living with my fiance at the time. No, we're no longer together at her aunt's house, and we had our uh, just born son. Basically, he was months old, and I was at home all day. I was working on music and YouTube, and I had just started to street perform, and basically we were living with her aunt, and her aunt, we didn't have to pay rent, but her aunt wanted me to get a day job, which understandable, and I completely understood that too at the time. I was just so focused on the music and really believed that I could make more money from the music. But basically, she gave me a month, and the month went by, and I didn't make the money. Uh, Although, like the last couple days, I finally started to actually street perform a lot, and I started to realize that I can make $15 to $20 an hour if I just street performed at the right spot, and I can make more than enough money, and more money than I had made at any other day job, if I just got rides to go street perform, or if I just continued to walk downtown. It was like a 4 mile walk, and just street perform more. But by the time I realized that, it was too late, and my ex fiance's aunt just, she didn't like me in general. Obviously, just nothing about. She didn't agree with anything that I was doing, and I was very stubborn. I really wanted to just convince her, like, hey, just give me a little bit more time. I know I can make more money. Uh, and she kicked me out. There was this argument. She kicked me out, and told me I need to get a job to come back. And so I was homeless. And actually, that first week, I did get a job. And I still wasn't allowed back immediately. And then, like, as I street performed outside of my job, I realized I was making more money street performing than at that day job. And so I continued to street perform. And then on top of that, my fiance, still at the time, we hadn't broken up at this point yet. Uh, she would show up with my son, so I could visit with my son. And a couple times, I even gave her money that I was making. So in my head, at that point, I was like, I might as well stay out here and keep street performing as much as possible and work on this music. And then maybe in the matter of a couple months, my fiance can move out of her aunt's house and move in with me, and I'd be making more than enough money. And that's the type of mindset I had. And I actually got fired from the day job that I had, uh, at that time, just because I wasn't good at the job. I'm pretty sure that's why I got fired. She didn't actually tell me why I got fired. It was a telemarketing job, and we were calling and, like, trying to get some political thing. I, I wasn't the best at the job. I had a lot of anxiety. I would stutter on the phone, so I got fired. But I actually did cry, just because I don't know. It's like at that point I thought, hey, I need this day job to move back in and see my son more often. But as time went on, and I was making money from street performing, and I was getting to see my son and support him, um, homelessness actually was a really good experience. Like, it was, and it was warm outside, so it's springtime basically, uh, or summertime, and it was warm. I would sleep in the parks. I would wake up. As soon as I woke up, I'd go downtown, pretty much to the same spot, and I play music. I'd be there at like 9, 10 a.m. I play music all day. By like 10 a.m., 10:30, I would usually make enough money for breakfast within the first half an hour. I'd make like 10, 15 bucks. And I mean, that was awesome. Like, just going there, playing my music, and I was still writing daily. I would be writing in front of people as they're walking by me. I'd be writing songs, or just playing my favorite songs, or the songs I thought that were good. and I was making money, and I was making friends. Like throughout this entire time, I was downtown playing music with my guitar. Other people were down there playing music, and like I met pretty much most of my best friends on that street and Broadway and 9th Street. Cowboy Titanium, Lockdown, my friend Mason. I I met many of them just by them walking up or me walking up to them, and we started playing music together, sometimes freestyling together. And that was one of the most fun, exhilarating experiences of my life. And that's also why I love street performing and why I still go back to there. Will go back to Columbia to this day. It's been months since last time I went back and street performed, but almost every single time uh, I I street perform, I meet an interesting character or a good friend or just it's a good time. But on top of all of that, I played on the radio for the first time, actually twice during this time of being homeless. It was a local radio station, KOPN, but that was big for me. I was like, I played on the radio for the first time. That was a big thing, even if it was just local. Um, Although they do broadcast globally, but I also won a talent show at Aladdin's Hookah Lounge. Uh, I won $50 in cash, and that was an amazing experience too. Because I had already been performing all day, and I had this one song called "Hello There's Sunshine." I have it now too, but it was a little bit different back then, like the lyrics and stuff. But still, the sound and the energy was pretty much the same. But I was playing that song all day and getting good reactions from people. And then I played that song, and then someone walks by like, "Woo, nice! Hey, there's a talent show over here at Aladdin Hookah Lounge going on. It's gonna start in like 10 minutes." I'm like, "What? All right." I went down there. I played "Hello There Sunshine" and I won. It was awesome. Um, so yeah, I mean, for the most part, being homeless for me was, since I was working so hard on music and still like trying to be the best father that I could and just doing the best that I could in the situation I was. The first part was a good experience. Um, and, and then it got cold, and also like wasn't making enough money. Also, I wasn't seeing my son as much as I used to, because I would see him daily, like all the time, and then I wasn't seeing him as much. So that was also very painful, and so that motivated me. And I set a date where if I wasn't making enough money, I had to get 2 day jobs, and that's what I did. And eventually, my fiance at the time and my son, uh, we all moved in together, just us, and got a apartment because I got 2 jobs and I was able to do it. Um, Now I regret not working with her aunt more, and I was so stubborn and a little bit too optimistic, and not. I should have set that date further back, so I could have money, and so she wouldn't have kicked me out, and I still probably could have gone downtown and had all those amazing experiences without being homeless. And so I do regret that time whenever, instead of just accepting it and saying, okay, you're right, I'll just go get a day job. I wish I would have done that instead of just trying to sell, like, hey, just let me keep working on this music. Let me street perform. Give me rides downtown. I don't even think I asked her to give me rides. I wasn't even good enough at selling it and letting her know that I had an actual way to make money. Uh, but yeah, I wish I would have been more mature, less naive, optimistic, and just done that differently. But I wouldn't take away the amount that I worked on music and everything else that I did, all the people I met, just all of that stuff, being there and just day in, day out, getting better at music, performing. Um, I just would have been smarter and tried to not become homeless. But I really think she didn't like me at all, and like even it was just a reason for her to kick me out. But still, I understand, and I do regret it to a certain extent. Even though she was very hard to work with, she didn't like me, and I wasn't allowed back in even after I had that day job. Although she did eventually let me come back in after I got the 2 jobs, and I lived there for a little bit again after I got kicked out, um, before we got our own place. But you know, homelessness was great. Besides like getting kicked out of parking garages and trying to find a place to sleep, and then especially whenever it got cold and rainy and snowy, it was like it was so hard to find a place to sleep already whenever it's warm outside, with the cops and everybody getting on you sleeping in parks and parking garages. There's literally nowhere like designated that you can sleep. I mean, there's certain places where certain people would sleep like as communities and stuff, but I didn't know them. I didn't feel comfortable just walking up and being there, so I would usually just find a spot like a bush somewhere hidden. But many times cops and just people would always get onto you, even if you're just on a park bench trying to sleep. It's like I was always thought that was ridiculous, and especially whenever it was cold outside, cold and rainy. Like, let the homeless people stand inside the parking garages because it's cold and rainy. Where else are we gonna go? We already tried to sit inside of the restaurants for like hours, but eventually they're like, "Hey, you gotta go if you don't buy anything." Some of them were cool though. There was a Jimmy John's who would let homeless people eat the old bread, and they'd let you sit in there for as long as you need to. So I always appreciate them. But basically, once it became cold and I just wasn't making any money and barely getting by, and there's a whole bunch of other complications and some people that tried to like manipulate me and just uh, scam me and certain things. There's lots of dangers being homeless, being out there, especially if you're on your own. Also, depending upon where you're at, but generally just nighttime in the city on your own can be dangerous. And yeah, so there was some pain involved, but the first part, lots of fun. Most of the pain from the first part was just the fact that I wasn't seeing my son as much. But overall, it was great. So, let me know what you think. Have you been homeless? Do you have any stories? Got some judgmental comments for me from what I did 7 years ago that I'm... Whatever. Leave them all down below. Thank you for watching. For the animals! Woo!